I stepped into the elevator with a file box under my arm and my nameplate jammed on top, the doors sliding shut on Harlan Pierce's smug little smile, like he was already halfway through replacing me. I didn't say a word, just watched his expression settle into that calm, polished, this isn't personal garbage he'd like to put on when he'd knife somebody. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? My phone buzzed. Victor Hale from Northbridge Partners. Graham, where are you? We're in the lobby. Today's the day. I said it flat. Plans changed. I'm no longer with Redline Analytics. Silence. Then, wait, what? What the hell are you talking about? The elevator hit the ground floor. Doors opened. Victor was right there, flanked by his team. Sharp suits, binders, the usual wolves in wool ready to ink a $3.6 billion merger. Behind him, coming down the stairs fast, was Karina Pierce, Harlan's daughter, the newly minted Compliance Phi P. She had a company handbook clutched like a Bible, like the rules themselves were about to back her up in a fight. Victor moved in for a hug, like this was all some negotiation tactic. It's not a bluff, I told him. She fired me. Article 12.3, no tie on a client-facing day. He turned, mouth tight. You fired your lead on a $3.6 billion merger because he wasn't wearing a tie? Karina blinked like she couldn't believe she was being challenged. Before she could answer, Harlan stormed in with two board members I hadn't seen in months. All three looked like they'd been pulled out of a donor lunch. I didn't say a damn thing. I didn't need to. Victor flipped open a binder. Page 22, Section 7, Key Individual Clause. If Graham exits for any reason other than death or medical leave, we reserve the right to walk. No penalty. I made sure that clause was in there. Argued for it for weeks. Harlan wanted me to let it go. I didn't. Victor looked at me and nodded. Thanks for the clarity, Graham. Then he turned to his team. We're out. Pull the offer. They didn't argue. They didn't stall. They just walked. I followed, box in hand, past Harlan calling my name like we were suddenly on the same team again. My feet felt weirdly light, like they weren't mine. 3 years of work, late nights, 70-hour weeks, flying coach to close deals, evaporated in one bad morning and one tie I didn't wear. But under the shock, buried deep, was something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. That night I watched the red line ticker bleed, 24% drop by close, another 15 at the open. All off a single rumor. Northbridge walked. The news hadn't caught the real reason yet, but it would. People I liked, guys in finance, support, a couple of junior PMs who didn't have backup jobs lined up, were going to pay the price. That pissed me off more than anything Harlan or Karina had done to me directly. But I still shut it down, turned off my phone for the first time in years, tossed it into a drawer and didn't look back. Next morning, I didn't bolt upright at 6. No calendar alerts, no back-to-back meetings. I made eggs, sat down, ate them while they were still hot. Weirdest part, I didn't feel behind. I felt human. I watched a full baseball game with the sound on, no laptop open, no half-written report nagging at me. Just back cracks, fastballs, and dugout arguments like I remembered from being a kid. Somewhere in the 7th inning, I realized I hadn't done that in years, not without guilt buzzing in my teeth. Denise Video called that night. She tilted her head and said, "You look like you finally exhaled." I laughed. 3 years. That place was a fire every day. I kept it running. She raised an eyebrow. And what did they ever give you besides more to carry? Couldn't answer that. I just stared at my own reflection in the call window. I looked 10 pounds lighter and 5 years older. 9 days passed like that. I didn't return press emails or recruiter voicemails. Some old college friends tried to reconnect, suddenly real interested in what I was doing next. I left them all on red. Instead, I walked the greenbelt by the river and drank decent coffee from a shop that didn't serve it in conference room cups. The barista called me by name by day 3. I realized I hadn't been home before dark more than 5 times in the last year. My dog barely remembered what I looked like. The guilt melted into something sharper, cleaner. It wasn't me that failed Redline. It was them, leadership. They didn't fold because I left. They folded because they let Karina swing a hammer she never earned. They gambled on control over competence, and the market caught it fast. On the 10th morning, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Harlan's voice came through quiet. "We need to talk. The board wants to meet you. Today, if possible." I let the pause stretch. He sounded older than I remembered, worn down. I could almost picture him in that corner office, sleeves rolled, tie loose, trying to figure out how to unwind his own mess without bleeding out on the carpet. "I'll think about it," I said, then hung up. I spent the rest of that day lying on the floor staring at the ceiling fan, not asleep, not tired, just thinking. Did I want my job back? No, that ship was underwater. Did I want an apology? Maybe. Leverage? Definitely. Or maybe I just wanted to make them feel even a fraction of what I felt walking out of that elevator with a box full of 3 years of sacrifice. I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew one thing. If I went back, I wasn't crawling. At 7 a.m., sharp, I called the board line directly. No assistant, no email thread. "I'll come in today," I said, "but I'm not walking into another ambush. I have conditions." No one argued. 4 hours later, I walked back into that same boardroom. Same table, same chairs, same cheap coffee and corporate mugs. I wore the exact blazer from non-compliant day. No tie again. That wasn't a mistake. I wanted them to see it and remember what they'd done. The faces around the table told the whole story before anyone opened their mouths. Embarrassment, stress, fear. Some of them couldn't even look at me. Karina wasn't there. No surprise. They'd buried her behind some HR curtain while they scrambled to glue the company back together. Ellen Ward, board chair, gave me a tight smile and started with, "Graham, thank you for coming in. I cut her off. "Let's not waste time with gratitude. You need help, or I wouldn't be here." She paused, nodded once, and motioned for me to continue. I opened the folder I'd brought. Redline stock is down 37% across 2 sessions. 2 enterprise clients are now reviewing contract alignment, which we all know is code for prepping an exit. Daily press thinks you're restructuring. Northbridge is gone, and with them goes our bridge facility unless someone fixes this fast. I leaned in. Why would I lift a finger for a board that sat silent while your newly minted VP weaponized a dress code on a billion-dollar deal day? No one answered. Harlan looked down at his hands. A few others fidgeted with pens. One cleared his throat, didn't speak. Ellen broke the silence. "What would it take?" I slid the folder across the table. Full reinstatement, triple my old salary, board seat, absolute authority over strategy execution, non-negotiable, 6.5% equity, milestone vesting, and a public statement clearing my name for wrongful termination. She opened it, read line by line. I waited, then added, "One more clause. Any new business I originate while employed, 60% mine, 40% redline. I retain full control." That landed like a punch. Harlan's face turned red. "That's not standard." "Neither is firing your merger lead over a tie," I said. Ellen didn't flinch. "You really think you can fix this?" "I know I can. But I'm not coming back to babysit the same problems. I want control, and I want protection. If I'm doing the heavy lifting, I decide how the weight is carried." The room went quiet again. She kept reading. A couple of board members exchanged looks. I could feel them running the math in their heads, what they'd lose if I walked again versus what they'd swallow to make this go away. Ellen reached for the pen. "If I sign this, you're committing." "I already have a plan," I said. She signed, then passed it to her left. One by one, they followed. Harlan was last. He hesitated, finger resting on the edge of the folder. "This clause," he said, tapping the 60-40 split. "It's steep. So is the hole you're in," I said. "But by all means, keep digging." He signed. Ellen looked up. "When do you start?" I stood, picked up the folder, and tucked it under my arm. "Already did." I walked straight out, down the hall, and into my old office. It hadn't changed. Same cracked monitor, Same framed certificate on the wall, like it meant anything. In the corner sat a dead plant I'd forgotten to toss out before they tossed me. I set the folder on the desk and started outlining the recovery plan. 2 days in, I picked up the phone and called Priya Shah. She answered on the second ring. "Back already? I need lunch, and I need a favor." We met at a hole-in-the-wall Mediterranean spot, 2 blocks from the office. Booth near the back, low noise, decent lamb. She slid into the seat across from me, arms crossed. Same sharp eyes, same no bullshit energy I trusted when the floor started shaking. "I need a side project," I said. "Clean, contained, experimental." "We're a data outfit," she said. "Not a hardware shop." I leaned in. "We're problem solvers, and I've got a problem." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't stop me. "It's about rules, dress codes, compliance optics, how companies use them to police people instead of helping them work. You know what they fired me over, so here's the idea. Adaptive pro gear, not lazy wear, smart wear." She kept chewing, so I pushed on. "Dress shirts with hidden collar inserts, so you can go from buttoned up to open collar without looking sloppy. Snap in a tie, snap it out. Trousers with adjustable hem tracks inside, up or down 2 inches depending on the shoes, the day, whatever. Jackets with modular plackets so you can pass a knit band without changing your whole outfit." She blinked. Put her fork down. "You serious? As a heart attack. You want to do this through Redline?" "No, off books, quiet. We use what my contract allows. Clean accounting, my cash for protos. Redline gets compensated for any resources we touch. But this is mine to steer." She sat back, considering. "If we can isolate it to product ops and lab time after hours, we could prototype. But only if we stay clean, no commingling. You violate your own terms, I'm not backing you." "I wouldn't ask you to. I want it clean too." She nodded once. That was enough. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter with a notepad and 2 columns. Left side, real rules that made sense. PPE in labs, closed-toe shoes on site visits, formal wear in legacy client meetings. Right side, junk. No facial hair in sales, no visible tattoos. No hoodies even under a blazer. Tie required with 0 flexibility for context. That last one still burned. This wasn't about looking sloppy. It was about power, how it gets used to make people shrink themselves to fit some broken ideal of professional. Shift works had to be the opposite: useful, flexible, respectful of time, space, and effort. Not a rebellion, an adjustment, one that let people meet the standard without twisting themselves into knots. After hours, we got to work. Quietly, I greenlit material orders under the contract's side venture clause. Priya pulled 2 trusted engineers who knew how to shut up and build. We added a tailor-turned UX lead, a design intern who never got credit for her sketches, and someone from supply chain who owed me a favor. 6 people, no leaks, no one outside that group knew. We worked late, never left a trace in Redline systems. Prototypes stayed in a locked closet in the back corner of the lab. Shiftworks wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom, a pressure valve for a system that had been hissing for years. And this time, it was mine to control from day one. Days were full, fast, and unglamorous. The kind of work no one writes press releases about. I tore into contract terms like a surgeon with a grudge, cutting fluff, firming up penalties, rewriting clauses so airtight even Victor would raise an eyebrow. I called him one night, direct line. "If I come with new governance and teeth, will you hear a slimmed-down proposal?" There was a pause. He said, "I'll look, but trust will be tight." "I've got the authority now," I told him. "This isn't a pitch, it's a fix." Inside Redline, I started gutting nonsense. We trimmed legacy waste, killed 3 pet projects that had been draining budget with 0 returns. One of them had a lead who had been coasting on buzzwords for 2 years. Gone. I made damn sure cuts didn't land on the people who'd been pulling weight while the board chased optics. Middle managers who sat through my firing with their mouths shut, they got reassigned or quietly benched. By week 3, the place had stopped bleeding money, not growing yet, but no longer circling the drain. At night, I shifted gears. The Shiftworks crew worked in silence. No drama, no ego, just late nights under bad fluorescent lights with fabric scraps, needles, and frustration. We tested collar inserts that bent when they should have held shape, snapped seams that looked clean until you wore them. Polyester blends that puckered no matter what we did. 12 prototypes in, we had one that didn't fall apart when you moved your shoulders. I started wearing them. Monday, button down, tie snapped in, blazer sharp, ready for a client pitch. No one blinked. Tuesday, same shirt, tie snapped out, collar structured, no tie. Still looked like I belonged in any room on the floor. People noticed. A couple asked. I just said, old habit. No one pushed. Shiftworks wasn't ready for the world yet, but it was ready enough to live in the background while Redline rebuilt. It became my second wind, my private signal that I was steering again. Not reacting, not surviving, creating. One evening, I was going over new client feedback when I heard a knock. Harlan stepped in. He looked smaller. No entourage, no blazer. Just tired eyes and a manila folder he didn't hand me. "You're different," he said. I didn't look up. "Experience will do that." He stepped further in. I wanted to say sorry, again, for how it played out. "I heard you the first time." "I mean it." I finally looked up. He wasn't posturing, for once. "I know," I said, "but acceptance isn't forgetting." He stood there a second longer, like he wanted me to let him off the hook. I didn't. He left without saying anything else. Back at my desk, I made a note to kill one more low-performing retainer contract. Then I rolled my sleeves up and kept working. Shiftworks wasn't public yet, but it was getting sharper. So was I. And this time, no one got to pull the plug on it but me. 5 months in, we had stability. Not success, not comfort, but air to breathe. That was enough. I booked the all-hands for a Friday morning. No agenda, no hints, just mandatory attendance and my name on the calendar invite. When I stepped into the room, it was standing room only. People looked tired, curious, maybe a little anxious. I wore a Shiftworks shirt and trousers. No tie, no jacket, just the product as it was meant to be worn. I walked to the mic. No slides yet, no build-up. "We've kept the lights on," I said, "and we've got our core steady." That was the promise. A few nods, no applause. Good, they were listening. "Now, I want to show you something else." The screen behind me lit up. Black background, clean type, Shiftworks. I clicked once. "Adaptive professional wear for modern workplaces with old rules," I said. "That's the problem we solved." I stepped back and pointed to my shirt. Collar insert, structured, hidden. Tie snaps in, snaps out. "Watch." I pulled a small panel from my pocket, slipped it under the collar, and snapped the tie into place. 10 seconds flat. Hands stayed steady. I'd practiced this moment in my head for weeks. "This is the same shirt I wore yesterday. Different setup. Same meeting." I popped the tie back off, unfastened the collar placket, and let the open collar hold clean lines. Trousers adjust up or down 2 inches inside the hem. No tailor. Same cut. I let that settle. Nobody spoke. Then I said it. Article 12.3 said, tie required on client days. The air shifted. That rule was used to yank me from the line on the morning of a multi-billion-dollar merger. Not for ethics, not for performance, for optics. I didn't name her. I didn't need to. But I felt it. Movement to my left. A chair shifting. A breath held and not released. There are rules that keep us professional, I said. And there are rules that keep certain people small. Silence. Shiftworks is a practical answer to the second kind. For the people who show up, who get the work done, and get boxed out anyway. I moved to the next slide. Legal structure, contract details. Per my signed terms, Shiftworks is an independent entity. Redline holds 40%. I paused. We launch in 10 days. The accounting is clean. The structure is locked. The timing isn't up for debate. Another pause. Then, I welcome your support. That was it. No pitch deck, no emotional sell. Just a solution built from a cheap shot that cost them almost everything. I stepped off the stage, walked back to my seat, and let the weight of it sit on the room. Launch day hit harder than any of us expected. We thought we were ready. Server capacity doubled. Customer service staffed up. Supply chain on standby. Still, by 10 a.m., the site throttled from demand. Orders stacked so fast we had to queue processing. Articles started flying the same afternoon. Fired over a tie, he built a brand that makes rules adapt. Shiftworks, clothing that doesn't punish you for doing the work. By the end of week 1, we had back orders through the next quarter, and enough interest from small retailers to justify building wholesale. 3 weeks later, I'm in the middle of reworking supplier terms when my phone lights up. Text from Priya. Check Victor's podcast. Now, I pulled it up. Victor Hale in front of a mic, talking shop. Host asks about travel gear. He shrugs and says, I use their travel blazer. Best thing I own. Looks boardroom, feels like a hoodie. He wasn't even talking about Shiftworks. It just came out. Casual, offhand. The clip hit LinkedIn and ran wild. Every VC intern, startup founder, and mid-tier exec shared it like it was gospel. Overnight, our queue doubled. Again. By the end of that week, Harlan called me into his office. He looked tense. No small talk. The board's nervous, he said. They think Shiftworks makes Redline look petty. It tells the truth, I said, and solves a problem. It's damaging. Sometimes truth is. He rubbed his temples. Graham, what do you actually want here? Revenge or revenue? I didn't blink. Consequences first, growth second. He opened his mouth, then shut it. Just stared. I leaned forward. When small people weaponize rules just because they can, it costs everyone. You don't fix that by ignoring it. You fix it by changing the incentives. He didn't argue, just sat back, quiet. Maybe trying to figure out how much of this he helped cause. I didn't gloat, and I didn't let him off the hook. You've apologized, I said. Now change what you build, and start rewarding what actually matters. He gave a slow nod, but didn't say thanks. That afternoon, I opened a secure line to Victor, sent him a revised merger frame, harder governance controls, reduced valuation, stricter clawbacks, but still a viable deal. Attached to the end was a clause he'd recognize. No board interference, no optics-based vetoes, no culture-fit garbage dressed up as judgment calls. He called me 10 minutes later. You stay in charge? He asked. Yes. Then I'll move, he said. And just like that, the next phase started. 4 months after launch, the Northbridge deal closed. It wasn't the celebration version we pitched a year earlier. No champagne, no cameras. The terms stung. Lower valuation, tighter governance, oversight clauses that made the board twitch. But it kept Redline alive. Lights on, salaries paid, burn rate cut in half. Victor stapled a clause to the end himself. No negotiation. If I stepped down, he had the right to pull capital. Not consider it. Pull it. No delays, no board vote, just a hard lever. I signed without blinking. I wasn't going anywhere. That same week, the first full quarter numbers came in. Shiftworks had out-earned Redline's core business by 15%. No bundling, no creative accounting. Just product flying off shelves, waitlists growing, and zero churn from our top 5 clients. That 40% stake the board almost rejected, best asset on our books. No one said it out loud, but the irony hung in the air every time we looked at revenue graphs. So, I made the next move. I'm spinning Shiftworks out, I told the board. Independent within 60 days. Redline keeps its share and enjoys the upside, minus the management drag. No one pushed back. When I announced it company-wide, the room broke into applause. Not polite, not performative, real. It was the first time I felt like people were clapping for the win, not the politics. We expanded the line. Men's, women's, unisex travel pieces, all built on the same foundation. Look right, feel right, adapt fast. No gimmicks, no hiding behind disruption. just gear that worked. Every tag carried a story. Built after a rule tried to make a person small. People noticed. I used a slice of profits to set up the ShiftWorks Foundation. Quietly, no launch party, no ego. We funded apprenticeships, covered licensing fees, bought suits, paid for coaching, for people shut out of the corporate world for dumb reasons. Tattoos, old records, gaps on a resume. Not knowing the dress code and getting labeled a culture risk. It wasn't charity, it was correction. Inside Redline, the culture started shifting, but I didn't lead that part. I didn't hold workshops or write memos. I changed what got rewarded. I promoted output over appearance. I defended judgment over checklists. Karina was still around, technically. They moved her to a junior analyst role in a department far from strategy, compliance, or any room where her name might carry weight. I hadn't said her name in a meeting since I came back. I never asked what she worked on, and no one volunteered the details. On the 1-year mark, I called a town hall. No press, no partners, just our people. I wore a ShiftWorks dress shirt and the soft-shouldered jacket that could go from casual to old school in under 15 seconds. Habit by then. I barely thought about it anymore. I walked up to the mic, nodded at the AV guy, and let the first slide hit behind me. Charts. Redline steady. Northbridge solid. ShiftWorks on a tear. A year ago, I said, I was shown the door over a page number in the handbook. Nobody laughed. They just listened. We learned something, I told them. Competence beats theater, and people do their best work when the rules help them do the work, not when the rules are used to remind them who's in charge. I clicked to the next slide. ShiftWorks full separation, announced for the following month. Then the new piece. We're launching a fellowship through the foundation. Slots for people who have made big professional mistakes and done the real work to change. I let that settle before adding. Applications open for everyone. No special tracks, no shortcuts. Afterward, as people filtered out, Karina approached, hands shaking a little. I hadn't spoken to her in a year. Is the fellowship real? She asked. Everything I do is real. She looked down. Can I apply? The process is hard by design. She nodded. I want to be better than my worst day. I believed her. That didn't mean she'd make it. I pulled a card from my pocket, handed it to her with the URL. 2 months later, the selection panel, one I stayed off, named her an alternate. No celebration, no shame. Just a shot if she wanted it. Harlan stepped down quietly a few weeks later. No big speech, just gone. The company stayed smaller, cleaner. We kept only what worked. ShiftWorks kept growing, faster than I thought it could, bigger than I planned. The name showed up in lobbies, subways, carry-ons, boardrooms. Every tag still carried the line. Built after a rule tried to make a person small. People asked if I felt better. I didn't feel better. I felt done. If there's revenge, it's this. I took a cheap shot and turned it into something useful. And the people who tried to shrink me will spend part of their careers walking through the space my work made possible. You don't get to choose how they come for you, but you do get to choose the size of your shadow. I chose mine on purpose.